welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in. Go ahead and take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let this story guide you on a journey through history, human resilience, and a pretty incredible dedication to continuous learning. Today, we're exploring the life of a man who literally changed his country forever. It's a journey of profound perseverance and an unbreakable pursuit of freedom. I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine a small boy sitting quietly by candlelight. The cabin around him is totally dark and silent. And in his hands is a book, a really old book that he actually borrowed from a neighbor who lives miles away. Every single night, this boy reads. He wants to learn everything. He's desperate to deeply understand the world around him. He didn't really go to school much at all, but this quiet, intense hunger for knowledge, well, it would eventually shape history. His story traces one of the most incredible arcs we've ever seen. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, into profound, grinding poverty. His home was just a tiny log cabin in Kentucky with one single room, a dirt floor. His father was a hard-working farmer, and from a very young age, Abraham carried water, helped with animals, chopped wood for the fire. Yet somehow, this boy from a one-room cabin would rise to the highest office in the land. It's such a beautiful reminder that our beginnings absolutely do not determine our endings. Life was incredibly harsh for his family back then. When Abraham was just 7 years old, they traveled through these dense forests and crossed rivers just to start a new life in Indiana. But 2 years later, something truly terrible happened. His gentle mother, Nancy, who had always taught him to be kind and honest, caught a dangerous disease called milk sickness. There was no medicine, nothing they could do. Abraham just had to watch her grow weaker and weaker. In 1818, she passed away. He was only 9 years old. His heart was completely broken, and that deep, heavy sadness stayed with him for years. But from that deep sorrow, this incredible resilience started to bloom. A year after his mother passed, his father remarried a wonderful widow named Sarah Bush Johnson. And Sarah saw something really special in Abraham. She saw his love for learning, and she warmly protected his time to read. Because formal schooling was so rare, he maybe went for 1 year total to these simple little blab schools. He just taught himself. He'd walk miles, literally miles, just to borrow a single book. And because paper was way too expensive, he would write his notes on wooden boards or just draw out his thoughts on the ground with sticks. What's truly wild is the sheer weight of the subjects he was consuming as a young kid. He wasn't just reading to pass the time, he read to really understand. He absorbed heavy books about history, law, mathematics, the life of George Washington. He read the Bible over and over again. Abraham read slowly, very carefully. He thought deeply about every single word, just desperately wanting to understand the foundational truths of the world. Through all this reading, he made a pretty vital discovery. He realized that words have immense power. Good words could actually change how people felt and help them grasp entirely new ideas. He loved telling funny stories he learned, making his friends laugh and think. And honestly, he needed that humor. As he grew, he became unusually tall, over 6 feet and very thin. People would sometimes make pretty harsh jokes about how he looked. But instead of getting angry, he just learned to laugh at himself. He stayed incredibly humble, realizing that physical appearance wasn't what mattered. True character was everything. As a young man, he worked really hard, physical jobs. One of them actually had him helping build a flatboat to travel all the way down the massive Mississippi River. And it was on this journey to New Orleans that Abraham witnessed something that just shocked him to his core. He saw slaves being sold. He saw human beings completely stripped of their freedom, treated entirely as property. The sight made him physically sick inside. He never forgot those faces, and he made a quiet, lifelong promise to himself right then and there that slavery was profoundly wrong. He didn't just hold on to these convictions, though. He channeled them into action. At age 22, his family moved to Illinois. Abraham knew he didn't want to be a farmer forever. He wanted to use his mind to actually help people. So with absolutely no money for law school, he did what he had always done. He taught himself. He borrowed law books, studied every single day, asked older lawyers questions. Eventually, he became a lawyer in Springfield, Illinois. And he built this beautiful reputation for being honest, fair, and always telling the truth. People trusted him so deeply that he was elected to the Illinois state legislature at just 25 years old. During this rising career, Abraham met and married Mary Todd. She was an educated woman from a wealthy family who shared his deep interest in politics. They built a life together and had 4 sons. Abraham was this gentle, deeply loving father who played with his boys and told them stories. But tragedy haunted him again. They lost their son Edward when he was only 3 years old, and later they lost William at age 11. These losses absolutely broke Abraham's heart. He and Mary suffered just unimaginable grief. Yet, somehow holding on to each other, they kept moving forward. Abraham eventually served a term in the United States Congress, where he openly spoke out against slavery, calling it morally wrong. Now, this was highly controversial because slavery was a massive part of the Southern economy. In 1858, he ran for the U.S. Senate against a very powerful politician named Stephen Douglas. They engaged in 7 formal debates. Abraham spoke with crystal clarity, arguing that slavery was wrong and absolutely must not spread to new states. Though he actually lost that specific Senate election to Douglas, his powerful words really resonated. The debates made him famous across the entire country. People remembered his unyielding principles. And that fame led to a totally pivotal year, 1860. Abraham Lincoln was chosen to run for president of the United States. He ran his campaign with profound dignity, reminding the country of the founding document's promise that all men are created equal. In November of 1860, the man born in a one-room dirt floor cabin was elected president at 51 years old. But it was a terrifying time. The country was deeply divided. Before he could even begin his work, Southern states, wanting to preserve slavery, refused to accept him. They began to leave the Union to form the Confederate States. This terrible divide plunged the nation right into its darkest nightmare, a civil war. It's the saddest, most heartbreaking kind of war, where people within the exact same country fight against one another. It was a time when brothers fought against brothers, friends against friends. The United States was literally being torn apart. Lincoln took office in March 1861, and just 1 month later, the war officially began. He was forced to make agonizing decisions to lead his country through its absolute darkest time. Let's just sit with this number for a moment. 600,000. The war dragged on for 4 bloody years, and more than 600,000 people died. It was more death than any other American war in history. Abraham carried the physical and emotional weight of every single lost life, every single day. He couldn't sleep. The deep sorrow was visibly etched right into the lines of his face. But despite that overwhelming grief, he never gave up. He believed too deeply in the Union, and he believed too deeply in freedom. Right in the midst of that darkness, in 1863, he made a bold and truly historic move. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This profoundly important document declared that all slaves in the Confederate States were free. Now, it didn't free everyone immediately, but it completely changed the meaning of the war. No longer was it just a fight to keep the country together. It was now a noble, defining fight to end slavery. It was the fight for human freedom and for human dignity. It showed the entire world what America truly stood for. Later that same year, Lincoln visited Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This was the site of a truly terrible battle where thousands had died. He spoke for only 2 minutes. Yet, in that incredibly brief time, he delivered what we now know as the Gettysburg Address. He spoke so softly of equality and democracy. He asked the living to honor the dead by continuing their unfinished work, stating that the nation must have a new birth of freedom. Those simple, carefully chosen words are still remembered today because they perfectly captured the heart of the American promise. Finally, in April 1865, the war ended. The Union had won. The country would stay together, and through the 13th Amendment, slavery would be abolished forever. Abraham was exhausted, aging greatly from the stress, but he was so incredibly hopeful. He wanted to heal this broken country, but tragedy struck almost immediately. On April 14th, while watching a play with his wife Mary in Washington, D.C., a man named John Wilkes Booth, who supported the defeated Confederacy, snuck into Lincoln's box and shot him. The president died the very next morning at just 56 years old. The entire nation wept in shock. They had lost their leader of hope. Even though his life was cut so tragically short, his legacy is immortal. Abraham Lincoln's story is one of the greatest ever told. He was born with nothing, grew up in crushing poverty, and suffered devastating personal losses, from his mother to his precious children. He witnessed the worst of human suffering in war. Yet, he never became bitter. He never ever stopped learning or trying to improve himself. His life is the ultimate proof that courage, honesty, and treating people with respect matters so much more than wealth or status. He stayed completely focused on justice. Which brings us to our final thought. When we explore these amazing stories, we learn so much more than just history. We learn about human strength. We learn that profound change is always possible. Just as Lincoln taught himself in the quiet candlelight, your own journey of learning is a beautiful adventure that takes time and patience. So how will his story inspire your journey today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep believing in yourself, and until next time, take care.